Wise heads have been at work outside the denial of fact and reality of the UK government. Andrew Neil, who the BBC at this point must be wishing they could retroactively abort, managed to defecate on 2 sacred cows recently. Since the British government has made a total horlicks of counting COVID cases, perhaps we should move back to COVID deaths, which even the government can't screw up, I think. The 7-day moving average of COVID deaths is 51.51 too many, but hardly a pandemic. There is no conceivable reason to stop talking about the number one metric in a supposed pandemic unless you're motivated by something other than a desire to convey the facts. For example, a desire to call something which is no such thing a pandemic. Touché. And this was Trump when he got back from hospital the other day.
And one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. And you're going to beat it. I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great, like better than I have in a long time. I said just recently, better than 20 years ago. Don't let it dominate. Don't let it take over your lives. Don't let that happen.
Convey the actually relevant information and be rational and proportionate. That's the message from those two. Now look at the other side of things. This was Johnson's chief lackey the other day responding to a highly critical Tory MP. Listen to the blatant straw man and the ridiculous prediction.
So it's perfectly reasonable to make the argument that we should just let the virus rip. I just think that the hundreds of thousands of deaths that would follow is not a price that anyone should pay.
The let it rip is a straw man, as it wasn't the MP's position, and it ludicrously paints what is now in effect a seasonal infection as something like a hurricane tearing apart a Florida coastal resort. And they've clearly chosen that kind of graphic language, let it rip, to try and put people opposing lockdown measures on the back foot, on the defensive. And hundreds and thousands of deaths, where the severe period saw just over 42,000, is obviously groundless hyperbole. But it's even more interesting to watch the other one on the BBC.
What would happen if you had several voices on your programme earlier, I was watching, some suggesting we should basically let it rip.
No one said that. No one said they should let it rip.
Or that the lockdowns were inappropriate, let's put it that way. The lockdowns were, and that the restrictive measures were wrong. I just can't accept that. And as Prime Minister, I couldn't take a course that could expose us to tens of thousands more deaths in very short order.
Tens of thousands in short order, and they're obviously tag teaming here.
So it's perfectly reasonable to make the argument that we should just let the virus rip.
Some suggesting we should basically let it rip.
It looks like they've got together and agreed to misrepresent any position that isn't theirs as a desire for mass murder. Why would you feel the need to do that if your desire is only to honestly convey the facts? Strawmanning is only ever dishonest, and Andrew Marr, in just about his only creditable moment in that interview, actually managed to call Johnson out on it.
Some suggesting we should basically let it rip.
No one said that. No one said they should let it rip.
Even the BBC calls out the let it rip straw man. And just on that hundreds of thousands idiot claim, I took a look back at the Neil Ferguson fantasy land of invented numbers. I'm not going to do this one to death because I think people are probably pretty much bored of sums and whatnot at this point, but I will just focus in a bit because I want to get this bastard as tightly on the hook as I can. That's the no measures taken scenario I looked at a video or so back. That's the social distancing whole population scenario, which is probably nearer to, and I think a little bit beyond, the actual Swedish response. This doesn't change anything much, because he used almost the same proportions for his Sweden and UK scenarios. But it does cut out the objection, hey, it's not the case that Sweden didn't do anything, so you can't compare with the zero measures taken scenario. This just cuts out that objection. So if we zing through to the relevant bit down there, that's the Sweden numbers, that's the no measures taken number I dealt with previously, that's the closer measures taken scenario. So 30,400 deaths, which is just over 5 times higher than the 5,900 reality. And if you now go to the UK, that's the identical scenario number, 242,000. And if you adjust it down by the exact same amount he was wrong for Sweden, you get 46,000, which is basically our 43,000 reality now the so-called pandemic is basically over. Since you asked so nicely, I've laid the number salad out on paper. Pause the video here if you want to, because I'm not going to dwell on this. Safe to say, lockdowns, etc. et al. make no difference. 2 plus 2 does actually equal 4. On which point...
As Prime Minister, I couldn't take a course that could expose us to tens of thousands more deaths in very short order.
Just repeat the lie. This next bit here is tremendous, which will be apparent in a minute or so.
We haven't actually had any people who attack not the policy but the consequences of the policy. We haven't had any alternative suggestions.
Well,
no one has come up with any better proposals that I'm aware of.
Nobody has come up with any better proposals. Okay. This is Sunetra Gupta talking to Andrew Neil about learning to live with it.
When you put these points to the Prime Minister, what did he say?
Nothing. But then he has responded since then.
No, clearly he didn't listen to you, did he?
He has since then responded in terms that suggest he doesn't agree with what we propose as a strategy.
So just to be clear there...
Well, no one has come up with any better proposals that I'm aware of.
When you put these points to the Prime Minister, what did he say?
Nothing.
Well,
no one has come up with any better proposals that I'm aware of.
Maybe he just forgot. Nobody's come up with any better proposals than 10 p.m. chucking out time, lockdown this, lockdown that, which is proven not to work. Andrew's guest there on his online TV show with professors from Harvard and Stanford, the three of them, they've put together a proposal which I will read a chunk of here. As infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection. Current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. Keeping these measures in place until a vaccine is available will cause irreparable damage, with the underprivileged disproportionately harmed. Fortunately, our understanding of the virus is growing. We know that vulnerability to death from COVID-19 is more than 1,000-fold higher in the old and infirm than the young. Indeed, for children, COVID-19 is less dangerous than many other harms, including influenza. And adjusting for lack of vaccine, it's actually about the same overall worldwide. As immunity builds in the population, the risk of infection to all, including the vulnerable, falls. We know that all populations will eventually reach herd immunity, and that this can be assisted by, but is not dependent upon, a vaccine. Our goal should therefore be to minimize mortality and social harm until we reach herd immunity. The most compassionate approach that balances the risks and benefits of reaching herd immunity is to allow those who are at minimal risk of death to live their lives normally, to build up immunity to the virus through natural infection, while better protecting those who are at highest risk. We call this focused protection. Those who are not vulnerable should immediately be allowed to resume life as normal. Simple hygiene measures such as hand washing and staying at home when sick should be practiced by everyone to reduce the herd immunity threshold, etc., etc. People who are more at risk may participate if they wish, while society as a whole enjoys the protection conferred upon the vulnerable by those who have built up herd immunity. And this is where they've officially laid it out on the web. It says exactly what I just read out, and this could actually be what finally pushes all the demented governments of the world off the disastrous trajectories they're collectively on. Could be a turning point. I think this is a timely moment to revisit what that cretin said to the BBC apparatchik, who obviously didn't challenge him.
we haven't actually had any people who attack not the policy but the consequences of the policy. We haven't had any alternative suggestions.
Well,
no one has come up with any better proposals that I'm aware of.
Said with a straight face, fully in the knowledge of having had face-to-face meetings with people explaining to him basically what I just read out. So we have the proof that lockdowns don't work, plus evidence from round and about, of course, certainly, but that's proof right there. And you have a clearly stated alternative that was put to that cretin about 2 weeks ago in person, face-to-face. She explained it to him as per that Andrew Neil show clip you saw just now. See the kind of liar we're talking about. And it's not necessarily surprising either when he's also listening to and acting on this kind of advice from his advisors, which is worth remembering. Making people feel threatened and submitting them to social shaming. The stuff of communists from the UK government advisors. The stuff of a police state, the only people he's listening to. So he persists with this everyone's going to die lie, and the lying about anyone who disagrees with his kamikaze approach, basically wanting to commit mass murder. Let it rip. That would be this lot, right? Mass murderers who want to kill thousands. That's how those two wretches want to represent these people and people like them. I'm going to fade this one out with my number salad because I think it's a useful addition using information which we now know to show how lockdowns don't work, which I think you should consider alongside the fact that Hancock and Johnson are still lying about this, accusing rational people who are opposing their lunacy as basically being wannabe mass murderers.